Hello everyone, I'm here today to tell you about the topic I chose for the first video presentation. After reading Elie Wiesel's Night, I was kind of inspired to look up a little more about different genocides that happened across the globe, so I am going to talk to you a little bit about what I found on another genocide in this article as I was researching. And basically, first of all, this article comes from the United Human Rights Council, and it was found at unitedhumanrightscouncil.org/genocide. And the United Human Rights Council has a lot of great articles about a lot of different things that has everything to do with human rights. Like, I'm looking on the right side, and it has a link towards like their Twitter feed, and basically it's talking about how Malawi banned child marriage last week through new legislation, which is great. Overall, it's a very credible source, I believe. So now I'm just going to start talking to you about the article I found. And the article I found is titled Genocide in Rwanda. And basically it's talking about the 1994 genocide and civil war that happened in Rwanda, Africa. Basically what happened was one tribe of the Rwandans called the Hutu, another tribe called the Tutsi in the early 1990s. I'm going to go ahead and quote one of the paragraphs and how it all started. It said, on April 6, 1994, a plane carrying President Habyarimana, it's a very interesting name, who was a Hutu, and his plane was shot down. Violence began almost immediately after that. Under the cover of war, Hutu extremists launched their plans to destroy the entire Tutsi civilian population. Whoa. It goes on to say, a couple paragraphs down, that the Rwandan genocide resulted from the conscious choice of the elite to promote hatred and fear to keep itself in power, which is something we saw in Elie Wiesel's Night when Adolf Hitler decided he needed to exterminate entire populations just to keep himself in power. And basically they're very, what's the word for it, insecure about their ability to lead their own countries, basically. So it ended up that the Hutu killed around 800,000 men, women, and children, and as many as 3/4 of the Tutsi population, which makes up 14% of Rwanda. So if you add that up, it killed about, like I said, 800,000 of the about 1.2 million that belong to this tribe. And as I go further down in this article, it says that the civil war and genocide only ended when the Tutsi-dominated rebel group, the RPF, defeated the Hutu perpetrator regime, and President Paul Kagame took control. And it says, even though the Rwandans are fully responsible for the organization and execution of the genocide, governments and peoples elsewhere all share in the shame of the crime because they failed to prevent and stop this killing campaign. First of all, I believe that all humans should be involved in the prevention of genocides, but it's often very impossible to know that one is happening because the leaders that perpetrate these crimes tend to keep it very low-key. Like, if there's another reference, or not a reference, but another thing you see in Elie Wiesel's Night is that the Jewish people were the only people that knew that the genocide was going on, because Hitler kept it so well under wraps. Every time the front moved close to one of his camps, he moved it, like we saw when they marched all the way from whatever camp they're at to the one in central Germany. And I believe that these guys did the same thing. They launched a civil war to cover up the fact that they were terminating basically an entire people just because of what they believed in and because they wanted the power, and they didn't want anybody else to have any say in what was going on in the country. It goes on to say that the policymakers in France, Belgium, and the United States and the United Nations were aware of the perpetrations for massive slaughter and failed to take steps needed to prevent it, which is another thing that happens in a lot of genocides. And wrapping up, I believe I'm going to do a little bit more research on the various genocides that happened over the course of human history, because I believe it's one of the most extreme examples of violations of human rights, and is a terrible example of what can happen in the future if we do not set up a a form of punishment for the people that do oppress the people that cannot fight for themselves across the globe.